Good evening. When people claim to have experienced hauntings, they usually talk about lost souls trapped in a confined space like part of a house. But tonight we'll be looking at an entire village where unwelcome entities are said literally to roam the streets. More on that later. Now, we've all had that feeling of déjà vu when unfamiliar places and events seem very familiar indeed. For some, there's an even more unsettling experience when they feel that they've been born with another person's memories. In our first encounter tonight, a man goes in search of his other life.
Martin Heald from Manchester believes he has an answer that lies long before he was born. The story begins with 7-year-old Martin finding a suitcase of war memorabilia in his father's bedroom.
What's this, Dad?
It's a telephone. Soldiers used it in the war. Must be your granddad's.
How does it work, Dad?
I'll show you. Right, you stay here and I'll give you a ring.
So he unpacked the telephones, went into another room, set them up, and actually started speaking to me.
Private Martin, are you receiving?
Yeah, receiving you loud and clear. What does this button do, Dad?
It's to send Morse code. Listen.
Within a fraction of a second of hearing the Morse code, the actual room itself changed completely, and then heard a low rumble and saw one of these old aircraft coming along in the sky, and it was being attacked by a smaller aircraft. And in the next second, it exploded the larger aircraft. I just couldn't understand what was going on. I was rather frightened at the time.
Dad, I was in this plane and I got shot down. I don't know how I was in the aeroplane.
What are you talking about?
It's true, Dad.
Oh, don't be silly.
Nothing like that had happened to him before in my life, and it was so real, the feelings and the actual scene itself, that it just couldn't be imagination.
All that took place more than a quarter of a century ago. Today, Martin Heald is 34 years old and living in Holland with his girlfriend Jennifer Bowers. After his experience, Martin did his best to put the terrible images out of his mind, but he couldn't. The image of that Second World War bomber being shot down kept coming back to him. Martin did his best to live with the horror, and then one day in the summer of 1995, the image came back more vividly than ever. It was whilst the celebrations surrounding VE Day were on television.
Martin, come and watch this. What's wrong?
The shock for me was so great at the time that I just couldn't understand why I was actually feeling those emotions. I had nothing to do with that era, nothing to do with that time, and there was actual memories. I decided in the end to actually try and find out why I was actually feeling these emotions, and I'd read somewhere about a regression therapist or regression therapy, which could probably give me some of the actual answers that are required.
Martin chose Josie van Asten, a Dutch hypnotherapist. She believes you can be taken back to a former life under hypnosis.
I don't believe that everyone has a past life. I'm sure of it.
Josie hypnotizes her subjects in a darkened, candle-lit room. She gently questions them, gradually regressing them in time.
Your mother's calling you. What is your name?
Richard. Richard Seymour.
How old are you?
18.
What year is it?
It's 1938.
There are a lot of people who can see their past lives. Remarkable with Martin was that there were so many facts and dates.
The pictures I was actually seeing under hypnosis was so clear, it was like actually watching a television picture.
Let's go forward. Where are you now?
I'm at an RAF base. I'm in the armed forces. I'm in the RAF. I'm putting on a uniform. It was heavy. The sleeves are too long.
What happens next?
I'm chosen
What for?
to learn Morse code.
And then what happens?
We're gathering for a mission. We're in good spirits. It's going well.
The emotions I could actually feel on the aircraft were unbelievable, especially with the realisation that we was actually flying over to Germany, and by this time I was emotionally this person. I had become this person. I was Martin Heal no longer. I was actually reliving that flight as that person.
Lights.
What's happening?
Bright lights.
Missile at 5 o'clock, just coming underneath us! Move it ahead! Move it ahead! Move it ahead!
Are you still alive?
No. No. My body won't be found because of the explosion.
Intrigued by the results of the regression, Martin contacted a World War II archive to see if there had ever been a Richard Seymour who served in the RAF. It wasn't long before he got a reply.
Oh, God. Jennifer? Jennifer, look. There's a bloke called Richard Seymour, and he was in the RAF. And he flew in missions during the war.
It can't be true.
I don't believe this. It's amazing.
Incredible.
The facts seemed to fit uncannily with Martin's recall under hypnosis. Incredibly, the real Richard Seymour had been a wireless operator during the Second World War. Richard's plane had been shot down on July the 20th, 1942, as it flew on a bombing mission to Germany. It was the target of an ace Messerschmitt pilot, just as Martin had recalled in his regression. Sadly, the airman still listed as missing, presumed dead. Martin Heald was now convinced he had been Richard Seymour in a previous life. Could that also explain weird events earlier in Martin's life? As a 17-year-old, he sat tests to join the RAF, including one for the Morse code.
And remember feeling during the test a strange déjà vu feeling, which at the time I didn't take much notice of. And 2 weeks later, I went back to Manchester Careers Information Office for the test results.
Ah, Mr. Heald, sit down. I've got your results. Can I ask you, first of all, have you got any experience in Morse code?
No, none.
Well, that's amazing. You got 100%. That's never happened before in the history of the RAF, to my knowledge.
Couldn't the results just have been a reflection of Martin's natural intelligence? Or could he really have been Richard Seymour in a past life? Martin maintains he'd never heard of Seymour before the hypnosis sessions. But is there some other explanation?
We have to bear in mind in all cases of hypnotic regression that the individual might be remembering things that he's acquired in a earlier part of his life and is completely forgotten.
A possible explanation? Martin was convinced not. Just how much information could you reasonably pick up about someone else's life? Surely there's only so much detail you could remember. Martin decided to submit himself to a second, more rigorous session with Yossi.
Where are you?
I'm at my house.
Can you tell me what it looks like?
It's big. It's a big house. There's a door. A wooden door.
Go through the door, and what can you see?
My parents.
What are their names?
My father's called Archie, and my mother's name's Mary.
And I began to see the the pictures and feel the emotions as strongly, if not stronger, than the actual first regression itself.
He could describe the surrounding, the house, everything what happens, his feelings, and it was all for him as if he were again in that life.
For the next hour and a half, Martin, under hypnosis, described life for Richard Seymour in 1938. He talked about a village with a row of shops near his house. There was a church with a small spire. Richard's father is the vicar. And there's a pretty bridge over a river opposite his home.
Is there a special place near your house where you like to go?
The river. Small river.
Do you like going to that river?
Yeah. To fish.
Martin decided to investigate and traced Richard Seymour's family to Swallowfield in Berkshire. There, on the village's war memorial, is a tribute to Sergeant Richard Seymour of the RAF. The quiet river Blackwater runs past the village as Martin described. And in pre-war days, there was a small row of shops, which today are private houses. The village church has a short spire. Its pre-war vicar, the Reverend Archibald Seymour, who lived with his wife Mary and family in the vicarage, as Martin had said. But Martin's description of Richard's house doesn't match the vicarage. So had Martin finally got some details wrong? Swallowfield's vicarage has been home to the village's priests since 1956.
Nobody coming to the village within the last 40 years would know of any other building other than that as being the vicarage.
Before then, the old mead house, just 2 doors away, was home to the village's clergy. And Martin's description under hypnosis fits that house exactly. It was the home of the Reverend Archibald Seymour in 1938.
I've not yet come across a case that is 100% proof of reincarnation. And in Martin's case, we cannot say that either. It still requires more evidence to prove it. But certainly it's a very real experience for him, and it is very, very similar to other cases.
Whether Martin's story of a past life is true or not, he has experienced one dramatic change since the hypnosis. He no longer has flashbacks or dreams. The memories of Richard Seymour have been laid to rest. After the break, we'll be visiting the Kent village of Pluckley. The official population is nearly 1,000, but that doesn't take into account some of the more spectral residents. Every year, villages across the country are pitted against each other for any number of honours and awards. Which has the best pub, the best cricket team, which is the best kept village. In Kent, that's a title which could easily be shared by a number of contenders. Among them is Pluckley, the setting for the television series about life in idyllic rural England, The Darling Buds of May. But as well as vying for the best kept village title, Pluckley lays claim to a more dubious honour.
Among Pluckley's local landmarks are Devil's Bush, Fright Corner, and Screaming Woods. As the place names suggest, the village has its darker side. Frightening shadowy figures and mournful apparitions are some of the strange sightings which have been reported over the years. And ghostly screams have been heard coming from the thick woodland that engulfs the village. If the stories are to be believed, this is the land of the undead.
There are 12 ghosts in Pluckley, plus 1 or 2 more that have shown on the scene recently. For a place this size, that is quite phenomenal. As far as villages go, this has got the most, undoubtedly the most haunted village in England.
This quintessentially English hamlet has indeed earned the title of the country's most haunted village. But can there really be 2 white ladies, a red lady and a monk roaming through Pluckley? These are questions that divide the village. Some dismiss the stories as pure fantasy, and warned that they could turn the village into a tourist trap. But to others, the ghostly tales are chilling reality.
I was coming back from Betherston, been babysitting the grandchildren. It was past midnight. We got to Pluckley, what they call Pluckley Pinnock, and we see this bright lights coming towards us. We could see it was a coach and horses. My husband just slowed down and we looked again because we couldn't believe our eyes. I mean, we've been up and down the roads loads of times, never ever seen anything before. There was nobody on it, couldn't see anybody on it. And then it just disappeared into the night. I mean, I've heard of Pluckley being haunted, but until we actually see that, I didn't really believe it until then. But I do believe that there are such things now.
Personally, I find nothing far-fetched about the possibilities of a haunting by a coach and horses here. This is the typical village, and it was on a main coaching route in the old days between Smarden and Charing.
The countryside was ideal for highwaymen.
And I was walking down the road and this figure appeared and round the corner. And I thought, God, what's this? And I froze more or less for a minute. And it was a figure in a long black coat with the collar right up. Looked as if it had riding boots on. And it went across the road, through the edge, and I just ran. I just tore off indoors. When I got in, I had goose pimples as big as eggs on my arms. Well, I think I see the highwaymen. I can do anything and nothing will frighten me. No one will frighten me. But that certainly did that night.
I have heard a story of the highwayman of Pluckley who fell out with his fellow rogues in the village and was driven out of the village towards Fright Corner, where there was a tree standing. He was pinned to it, terrible scream, bloody blades, and so ended the life of that man. But he continued to live in the village as a ghost.
But in Pluckley, it's not just the remote country roads that have been the source of supernatural tales. Gloria Atkins knew nothing of the village's ghostly reputation when she arrived in 1994.
When I first saw the Blacksmith Arms, as it was all boarded up, no lights, very spooky, and we viewed it by candlelight. But I liked it. I thought, well, I'm sure I could make a go of it as a tea rooms.
The old pub had originally been a forge dating back to the 16th century.
Well, it was a lunchtime, and Lynn is my assistant, and we were sitting in my kitchen. My daughter had been down, and she has one of these baby monitors, and it was plugged into the kitchen.
Oh, no. What was that?
And the transmitter was plugged in upstairs. And all of a sudden we heard footsteps coming over it. I mean, it was very definite footsteps. Gloria looked at myself and I looked at her and I said, oh my God, somebody's broken in.
So we both went upstairs, and of course there was nothing there.
I can't explain it, because I really don't know what it was. It sounded like a person, but there was nobody up there. So it must have been something, but what it was, I can't say.
There's been numerous things, confusing, unexplainable, odd little things, really, that I can't understand. For instance, there was a problem with Estelle.
I went to bed early that night, and it must have been about 10 I went to bed. I went to sleep and I sort of woke up for no apparent reason, and I opened my eyes and I just saw this figure at the bottom of my bed, like a shadow of a little boy about, I don't know, 5 or 6, something like that. If it was a dream, there's no way I've ever had a dream that realistic, and it was just, definitely couldn't have been a dream.
Even the dog has got her suspicions. She doesn't like going up the stairs. She gets very nervous, she barks, growls, all her coat and the back goes up. There's nothing there. And then also she would bark at something in the corner of the kitchen, near the ceiling. But there's nothing there.
It's difficult to understand why Pluckley should hold the title of England's most haunted village, but the answer may lie in its history.
The village of Pluckley is mentioned in the Domesday Book and goes back long before that. It's steeped in history.
The more superstitious might argue that Pluckley's entry in the Domesday Book, on page 13, may have something to do with its unfortunate reputation, but not all the stories are linked to historical figures. Taxi driver Raymond Breakspear picked up his most unusual fare in Pluckley.
Well, after 2 o'clock in the morning, picked up a couple of girls, smashed it. They came out the night club. Took them to the Headcorn, dropped them off. Coming back to Asher, came back through Pluckley. That must have been 2:45, 3 o'clock in the morning. A guy sort of appeared from the side of the road, flagged me down. Well, that's a bonus. You know, you don't often get a return fare at that time in the morning. Right, well, that's all amazing. Which way we got? If you got in the cab, where'd he go? If you didn't get in the cab, then... well, am I going nuts or what, you know? If the door had opened, I'd have heard it. The interior light would have come on. There's no way that someone could have physically opened the door and get out without me knowing. If you want an explanation, you go and find one. I haven't got one.
Pluckley made it into the Guinness Book of Records thanks to its extraordinary collection of ghost stories. One former parish priest, the Reverend Pittock, even conducted exorcisms in the village.
Who has the power of death. Let evil spirits be driven out, and may the angel of peace enter in.
But the present vicar, the Reverend Michael Higgs, is a skeptic.
I think there were one or two rumours perhaps before the war, but after the war, it seemed to take off then. And I suspect it might have had something to do with the tourist trade.
I definitely see the argument. Put it that way, I don't think. I see it. And I don't care who says I didn't, I did.
OK, I accept that. They have seen something, but what is it? And I think it's wrong just to jump to conclusions. I think one should have a more analytical approach to why you think you've seen something.
Well, it wasn't my imagination, because my husband see it as well.
The stories of the ghost of Pluckley that are fixed in my mind are those which were told and reinforced by people who lived in the village way back in 1984. But since that time, a lot of people have retracted, possibly by a bit of pressure put to bear on them to keep sightseers out of the village.
There are no ghosts in Pluckley. The only ghost that I believe exists here in Pluckley and in this church is the Holy Ghost.
Local people remain divided. Some are trying to rid Pluckley of its title as Britain's most haunted village. Others are convinced they have witnessed the paranormal. Whatever the truth, the reports of sightings continue.
This year, neither Pluckley nor any other place makes the record books with the title of England's most haunted village. You'll understand there's a problem measuring this kind of thing. Phantoms just won't stand up and be counted. Good night.